For 2,000 years, one trial has shaped civilizations. But beneath the surface of faith and tradition lie questions that challenge everything. This isn't just history, it's a profound mystery. Of all the trials recorded in human history, none resonates with such profound impact as that of Jesus of Nazareth. For 2 millennia, its narrative has shaped civilizations, inspired billions, and fueled countless theological and philosophical debates. We know the story. Betrayal, a hasty trial before Jewish authorities, a reluctant Roman governor, and ultimately the cross. But what if the commonly accepted narrative, woven through centuries of faith and tradition, isn't the complete picture? What if, beneath the surface of the biblical accounts, lie legal ambiguities, political maneuvering, and unresolved questions that challenge our very understanding of this pivotal moment? Today we embark on an investigation, peeling back the layers of history, law, and theology, to explore the alternative theories and unsolved mysteries surrounding the trial that changed the world. This is not about undermining faith, but about seeking a deeper, more nuanced understanding of an event that, even today, continues to puzzle and provoke. Our journey begins in the Garden of Gethsemane, under the cover of darkness. The arrest of Jesus is often presented as a swift, almost inevitable act following Judas's betrayal. But even this initial event is shrouded in intriguing questions. The Synoptic Gospels describe Jesus praying in Gethsemane, surrounded by his disciples, when Judas Iscariot arrives, leading a large crowd, some armed with swords and clubs, sent by the chief priests and elders. Judas identifies Jesus with a kiss, a gesture that has become synonymous with betrayal. But let's pause here. Why the need for a kiss of identification in the darkness? Was Jesus's face not well known to the temple guards and Roman soldiers in Jerusalem, given his public ministry and recent dramatic entry into the city? This detail, while poignant, raises the first yellow flag for some scholars. Alternative theories suggest that the kiss wasn't just for identification. Perhaps it was a prearranged signal to avoid a wider public disturbance, or even a symbolic act to claim a kind of authority over Jesus, marking him as a leader of a specific group, rather than simply a random individual. Moreover, who exactly comprised this large crowd? The Gospels mention temple guards and servants of the high priest, but Luke also hints at chief priests and officers of the temple and elders being present or involved. Were Roman soldiers also part of this arresting party, as implied in John's Gospel, which mentions a detachment of soldiers and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees? If Roman soldiers were present from the outset, it suggests a level of official Roman concern and pre-planning that goes beyond a purely internal Jewish religious matter. This could mean the authorities, both Jewish and Roman, had been watching Jesus closely, perceiving him as a significant threat long before the Last Supper. Was Judas's role purely that of a disillusioned disciple seeking to profit, or was he a pawn in a larger political game, perhaps even an agent provocateur, meant to expose Jesus's alleged revolutionary intentions? Some theories propose Judas believed Jesus would reveal his true messianic power and overthrow the Romans if pushed into a corner, and his betrayal was a desperate attempt to force Jesus's hand. This is, of course, speculative, but it adds a layer of complexity to the character often dismissed simply as the quintessential traitor. The motivations behind the Gethsemane arrest, therefore, are far from settled, pointing to a meticulously planned operation rather than a spontaneous reaction. Following his arrest, Jesus is led directly to the house of Caiaphas, the high priest, where the Sanhedrin, the supreme Jewish judicial and administrative body, convenes. This is where the core legal questions truly begin to emerge. The Sanhedrin consisted of 71 members, primarily Sadducees and Pharisees, and was responsible for interpreting Jewish law, hearing cases, and imposing sentences. Traditional accounts suggest Jesus was tried and condemned by the Sanhedrin for blasphemy, but a careful examination of Jewish legal traditions of the time reveals a startling number of irregularities that challenge the legitimacy of this trial. Firstly, Jewish law strictly prohibited capital trials from taking place at night, yet Jesus' trial began immediately after his arrest, under the cover of darkness. Furthermore, trials for capital offenses were generally not permitted on the eve of a Sabbath or a feast day, and this was the eve of Passover, one of the holiest days of the Jewish calendar. This rapid nocturnal assembly of the Sanhedrin raises serious questions about due process and fairness. Was it a desperate attempt to rush a conviction before public opinion could intervene, or perhaps to prevent a Roman intervention? Secondly, Jewish law required the accused to have adequate time to prepare a defense, and legal tradition mandated that a defendant be given access to witnesses and advocates. There is no indication Jesus was afforded any such opportunities. He was essentially tried without a defense counsel, a fundamental right in many ancient legal systems, including Jewish law. Thirdly, and perhaps most critically, the search for witnesses. The Gospels report that many false witnesses came forward, but their testimonies were contradictory, making them invalid under Jewish law, which required 2 consistent witnesses for a capital conviction. It was only when the high priest directly questioned Jesus, asking if he was the Christ, the Son of God, and Jesus replied, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power, and coming with the clouds of heaven," that Caiaphas tore his robes and declared, "He has uttered blasphemy." This moment is central to the traditional narrative. But consider this. Could Jesus' statement, interpreted as blasphemy, have been deliberately provoked? Was it the valid charge they could find? Some scholars argue that Jesus' claim to be the Messiah and the Son of God was not inherently blasphemous according to all interpretations of Jewish law, particularly if understood in a prophetic or symbolic sense. The specific charge of usually required uttering the divine name, YHWH, which Jesus did not do. His claim was more about his unique relationship with God and his messianic identity, which some religious authorities found threatening and heretical, but not necessarily blasphemous in the strictest legal sense. Could the blasphemy charge have been a convenient legal hook, a way to condemn Jesus on religious grounds when the true motivations were political? Jesus' teachings, his popularity, his critiques of the temple establishment, and his entry into Jerusalem, hailed as a king, undoubtedly threatened the established order. The Sanhedrin, particularly the Sadducees who controlled the temple, had a vested interest in maintaining peace with Rome and avoiding any unrest that could jeopardize their power. A charismatic figure like Jesus, attracting large crowds, was a dangerous variable. Finally, there's the question of jurisdiction. Under Roman occupation, the Sanhedrin's authority to impose capital punishment was severely curtailed, if not entirely removed. This is often cited as the reason Jesus was sent to Pontius Pilate. However, there are instances where the Sanhedrin did carry out executions, sometimes with Roman acquiescence. The very act of taking Jesus to Pilate suggests the Sanhedrin they needed Roman approval for an execution, implying that even if they condemned him, they couldn't carry out the sentence themselves. This makes the Sanhedrin trial in essence a preliminary hearing, a formal accusation designed to pressure the Roman governor into doing their bidding. Jesus, now bound, is delivered to Pontius Pilate, the Roman prefect of Judea. This transition marks a critical shift from Jewish religious law to Roman imperial law. And with this shift, the charges against Jesus also transform. The Sanhedrin, knowing that blasphemy would hold little weight with a Roman governor, presented Jesus to Pilate not as a religious heretic, but as a political agitator, a claimant to kingship, and a threat to Roman authority. He claims to be king of the Jews. This charge, or treason, was a capital offense under Roman law, punishable by crucifixion. Pilate, notoriously brutal and cynical, immediately becomes the central figure in this drama. The Gospels portray him as conflicted, repeatedly declaring Jesus innocent, finding no basis for a charge. He questions Jesus directly about his kingship, to which Jesus famously replies, "My kingdom is not of this world." This exchange for some solidifies Pilate's genuine belief in Jesus' political innocence. But was Pilate truly reluctant, or was his hand-washing a calculated political maneuver? Historical sources outside the Gospels paint a picture of Pilate as a ruthless administrator, prone to cruelty and indifference, who had no qualms about executing Jews who challenged Roman rule. Josephus and Philo describe him as oppressive, corrupt, and quick to use force. This historical context makes his portrayal as a hesitant, almost sympathetic figure in the Gospels appear somewhat incongruous. One alternative theory suggests that Pilate's apparent reluctance was not due to a sense of justice, but a shrewd political calculation. He might have seen through the Sanhedrin's motives, recognizing that they were trying to use Roman authority to eliminate a religious rival. By declaring Jesus innocent, Pilate might have been subtly asserting his own power, refusing to be a mere puppet of the Jewish authorities. He was, after all, Rome's representative, not theirs. Then there's the famous Passover amnesty, the tradition of releasing a prisoner during the Passover feast. Pilate offers the crowd a choice: Jesus or Barabbas. The crowd, allegedly swayed by the chief priests, chooses Barabbas, a known rebel and murderer. This scene is pivotal. But does such a tradition genuinely exist in historical records outside the Gospels? Many scholars are skeptical. There's no independent corroboration of a widespread Roman practice of releasing prisoners during Passover in Judea or anywhere else in the Roman Empire. Could the Barabbas episode be a literary device, serving a theological purpose, highlighting the irony of the crowd choosing a genuine criminal over the innocent Son of God? Or was it a rare, perhaps unique concession by Pilate to appease the volatile population during a sensitive holiday, aiming to prevent a full-blown riot? The name Barabbas itself, meaning Son of the Father, adds another layer of intriguing symbolism. Was he a truly random choice, or a deliberate counterpoint? The crowd's sudden clamor for Jesus' crucifixion also warrants scrutiny. Was it truly a spontaneous cry from the masses, or were the chief priests and elders effectively orchestrating the crowd, manipulating public opinion to achieve their desired outcome? The political climate in Jerusalem during Passover was always tense, a tinderbox of religious fervor and nationalist sentiment. Pilate, with his own history of brutally suppressing dissent, would have been acutely aware of the potential for widespread unrest. The threat of a report to Caesar about his inability to maintain order would have been a far more potent motivator for Pilate than any sense of justice for a Galilean preacher. The claim that, if you release this man, you are no friend of Caesar, would have been a direct and serious threat to Pilate's career. So was Pilate's washing of hands a genuine act of absolution, or a cynical gesture to publicly shift responsibility, allowing him to execute Jesus while claiming moral detachment? The Roman legal system valued order above all else. If Jesus was perceived as a potential source of disruption, regardless of his actual guilt or innocence on the charges, a Roman governor would likely err on the side of execution to maintain stability. For Pilate, Jesus was a minor problem that could escalate into a major headache for Rome. Eliminating the source of potential trouble would have been standard Roman procedure. Before the crucifixion, Jesus endures scourging, a brutal Roman punishment designed to inflict extreme pain and weaken the condemned. The Gospels imply Pilate ordered this, perhaps as a final desperate attempt to appease the Jewish leaders and avoid a crucifixion, hoping a severely beaten Jesus would be enough to satisfy them. But it was not. The journey to Golgotha, the carrying of the cross, and the eventual crucifixion itself are described with harrowing detail. Crucifixion was a slow, agonizing method of execution, primarily reserved for slaves, rebels, and the lowest criminals, designed to maximize suffering and public humiliation. It was a clear message from Rome: challenge our authority, and this is your fate. Yet, even in the final moments, lingering questions persist. The speed of Jesus' death is often noted. While crucifixion could last for days, Jesus reportedly died within hours. Was this due to the severity of the scourging, or were there other factors? The Gospel of John mentions a soldier piercing Jesus' side with a spear, from which blood and water flowed. This detail has fascinated medical professionals for centuries. Some interpret it as evidence of pericardial effusion or pleural effusion, conditions that could result from extreme physical and emotional trauma, indicating that Jesus died of heart failure or hypovolemic shock prior to the spear thrust. Others view it purely symbolically. The role of Joseph of Arimathea, a wealthy and respected member of the Sanhedrin, who bravely requested Jesus' body from Pilate for burial, also poses questions. Why would a member of the very council that condemned Jesus risk so much for his body? Was he a secret follower, or was there more to his intervention, perhaps an attempt to offer a proper burial as an act of mercy, or even to distance himself from the Sanhedrin's actions? His intervention allowed Jesus to be buried in a tomb, rather than thrown into a common grave for criminals, a significant departure from standard Roman practice for crucifixion victims. The events leading up to and including the crucifixion are not just the culmination of a legal process, but a profound human and political tragedy. The Roman soldiers, the Jewish leaders, Pilate, the crowd, and even the disciples all played roles, willingly or unwillingly, in a complex tapestry of power, fear, faith, and ambition. From the shadowy Garden of Gethsemane to the desolate hill of Golgotha, the trial of Jesus is a story etched into the very fabric of our civilization. We've explored the profound irregularities of the Sanhedrin trial, the nocturnal proceedings, the lack of due process, the questionable charge of blasphemy. We've scrutinized Pilate's apparent reluctance, questioning whether it was genuine justice or calculated political maneuvering, and examined the historical veracity of the Passover amnesty. These alternative theories and unresolved mysteries do not diminish the spiritual significance of Jesus' story. Instead, they enrich it, inviting us to look beyond simplistic narratives and engage with the historical, legal, and political complexities of an event that reverberates through time. The trial of Jesus wasn't merely a theological decree. It was a human drama, played out against the backdrop of Roman occupation and Jewish religious law, fueled by fear, power, and a clash of worldviews. Whether you view Jesus as the Son of God, a revolutionary prophet, or a charismatic teacher, the legal and historical questions surrounding his trial remain compelling. They challenge us to think critically, to seek deeper understanding, and to appreciate the intricate layers of an event whose true motivations and nuances may forever remain partially obscured by the mists of history. The trial of Jesus isn't just a story we've been told. It's a mystery we're still trying to unravel. Thank you for joining us on this exploration. If you found this discussion thought-provoking, please like this video, subscribe for more historical investigations, and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring.